In today's video, we're going to preview Chelsea versus Wolves. We're just coming off the back of a 2-0 win against Servette last night. So how is the team going to line up against Wolves? We're going to have a quick look today in the preview. Right, now we're going to choose our team for the Wolves game. On screen, I've sort of set up how Wolves press. It is in more of this sort of 4-2, then sort of 4, or if you want to call it a 4-2-2-2, or a 4-2-4, essentially. Get rid of those lines. We'll start off with our lineup. I think Sanchez is going to start in goal. We saw him say during the press conference that Sanchez is pretty much the Premier League goalkeeper. Jorgensen will play Thursday nights, Conference League and domestic cups. So until performance levels change enough, that should be the case. So we're going to go Sanchez in goal. That seems pretty likely. I think we see Colwill and Fofana return as the two centre-backs. Fofana rested. Colwill rested from the game the other night. Tosin, I thought, played well. Badiashile and Disasi not as well, but again, kept a clean sheet, so that is something. But I think we're going to see these main two return, and I'm happy that they will. Gusto should be back in at right back. Cucurella should be back in at left back, although big shout out to Vega, who, of course, obviously performed exceptionally well, in my opinion, yesterday. Probably the standout performer for me in terms of what he gave us. Maybe not man of the match, but in sort of just for what you expect from him and what he actually gave in terms of energy. But I do expect this to be back to this back four. We'll speak about what we may see in terms of how we configure it going forward, in terms of how it shapes up in possession. As I said, as I've got these lined up here, this is sort of how Wolves pressed against Arsenal. So I'm mainly going off of that game because I've rewatched the game where they played Arsenal v Wolves. Sort of had a little look, analysed their pressing patterns and things like that, and what maybe Chelsea could exploit, and what I'm expecting to see. So, Caicedo obviously played 90 minutes, well, no, nearly 90 minutes. I'm expecting Lavia to come back in as the starting six, and I'm expecting Enzo Fernandez to start, whether it's on the right or the left. So we're going to put him there for now. The other decision for me comes down to where everybody else is going to play. And I'm going to go out on a whim, and this could be either way. There's two things this could be, right? So I'm going to say one way it could work is Nkunku still plays, which is very likely, and Palmer plays on the right. But against Wolves, I have a feeling they're going to want direct wingers, and I think we're going to see the inverted fullback system return as it did last night against Servette. So I'm going to go Palmer in the 8, Madueke on the right, Jackson up front. And then that leaves us with the scenario of, he basically said Neto is unlikely to play this game in terms of starting because he has already now come off the bench against City and played 60 minutes last night, and he might not quite be ready for that sort of amount of minutes at this point in the season. Mudryk just played 90 as well. Sterling's obviously out of the fray. Felix has just joined, but I expect him to be on the bench and maybe feature from the bench. So do we maybe see Nkunku on the left again, is what I'm thinking. If not, maybe Mudryk does start and he gets 2 back-to-back starts. Who knows? I'm going to say Nkunku starts on the left, which is weird for the dynamic of the team. But we're going to speak about that now, okay? So if it was to set up like this, of course, there's other ways this could be. As I've said, this could easily be Mudryk. Nkunku could start here and Palmer could start on the right, and then this could be a left winger still, vice versa. But with like the Neto news and things like that, I'm going to go with this team to start. I expect people like Felix to come from the bench, as I said. So now, as we said, we've got the 4-2-4. How are we going to form the build-up pattern with this formation? Well, I think Gusto is going to still invert. So I think what we may see is something like this in terms of in possession. Okay, so you got this 3, outnumbering there 2 in the press. If one of these press forward, which again was similar to how you sort of maneuvered the block against Inter, but in a different shape. If one of these presses forward, this gap opens up. If you can get this ball behind into this pivot, again, one of these might play higher up, one of these might be slightly more conserved. If you can get the ball into one of these players and they can get it into, say, an Enzo, who is now in space, I think those pockets are going to be really important against Wolves, sorry. I did see against Arsenal were exploiting it as well. They were getting Ødegaard into these sort of pockets here. And again, the whole point of this being, if one is pushed up, and then this one has to drag out as well to sort of track that man. If that guy, say this man is pressed up on Fofana or is holding that position, Madueke stretching with this fullback. A lot of space here for the centre defensive mid to cover. If they don't cover it, Palmer can face forward and he can attack. If they do cover it and come over, then there is a lot of space for either Jackson to drop in. Enzo, of course, would be more central at this point if Palmer was in this pocket. So again, where does this man cover? Can Lavia get forward? Different options, but all about dragging and creating that +1. So I think these pockets outside of these DMs are going to be very important for which of these players drop in. And again, I've spoke about this before. If you haven't seen my Maresca video, I would go back and watch it because I keep trying to explain the importance of these number 8s and these deep, I call them wide receiving pockets, and how that they come into there to receive the ball and play forward. And this is something that Enzo does exceptionally well because, as we saw last night against Servette, over the top into Madueke, which went to a goal from that same sort of pocket position. The other thing that Wolves tend to do, at least against Arsenal, is if you can get the ball into these sort of areas and get it into the wide man in a 1v1, the fullback will get attracted out towards the ball. And that happened on a few occasions. This will sometimes lead to this player having to fill in here. So it's often Lamina that had to do that a few times. Or, as I said, it just ends up with a big gap. So these gaps in between, very important that the 8s can also affect the game in those pockets. If you can find those little inseam runs, they do open up these little gaps here, these little passing gates, if you want to call them. They do open up with Wolves. At least they did against Arsenal with the way that the fullbacks would be attracted to the ball in those 1v1 situations. So again, that's why I'm kind of along the lines of starting someone like a Madueke, so you can pull this defender out and Palmer can attack this space or can receive in the deep pocket. 2 places, as I said, Ødegaard had a lot of joy against Wolves. He was receiving in the pocket and or attacking this space, and I think that is exactly what you want your star man to be doing. That's what Cole Palmer is to Chelsea. So if you can create those big gap openings, play through. Jackson, I'm expecting to be continuing to pin these centre backs because the whole point, obviously, is if he drops in too deep, then the defence can narrow up a bit because they've got less worry centrally and they can shuffle together to cover one side, and those gaps won't open up as much. But with Jackson in there, he can sort of, with his movement and his sort of direct running in between, he can allow and pin that defence backwards whilst also spreading them out a little bit further in that back 4. So just to recap, this is how I expect Wolves to press. That was the main thing I was assessing. Again, this is a massive turnaround from the Servette game, which was last night. Then we've got the Wolves game coming up instantly. I'll be posting some more things on Twitter, maybe to do with Wolves more offensive and how they could hurt us offensively, which I haven't really touched on today. But this is the lineup I'm expecting. Do let me know your lineups in the comments down below as well. I expect these pockets to be massively important and those little half-space channel runs if the fullbacks can be dragged out. So let's see if we get those 1v1s created here, little half-space runners, and these pocket players creating from deep, as Enzo and Palmer can do. So now I'm going to go into the outro of the video. As I said, please do let me know your predictions down in the comments down below, and up the Chelsea.